The White House, the media, and the far left are now all going after Senator Joe Manchin, blasting his character, painting him as duplicitous, and even calling him a threat to the future of democracy. Wow. All this after the moderate Democrat definitively came out against the president's massive social spending plan. Here's what he told Fox News Sunday.
I've always said this, Brett. If I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no on this legislation. I have tried everything I know to do.
And just like that, Joe Biden's agenda sidelined. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany at Turning Point USA's America Fest in Phoenix, Arizona. My co-host Harris Faulkner is in our New York studio, along with the host of Kennedy on Fox Business Kennedy, Fox Nation host Tommy Lahren, and in the center virtual seat, Fox News radio host, Fox News contributor, and political guy Benson. Well, while Manchin said his decision came after months of trying to reach some sort of compromise on the bill, the White House claimed it was taken by surprise. Press Secretary Jen Psaki slamming Manchin for his, quote, sudden and inexplicable reversal on Build Back Better, while adding that they will now push him to keep his word. But the far left is going even further and slamming Manchin. Take a listen.
I think what Senator Manchin did yesterday represents such an egregious breach of the trust of the president. And it's also, you know, this is exactly why it's an outcome that we had warned about.
I mean, we all knew that Senator Manchin couldn't be trusted. You know, the excuses that he just made, I think, are complete bull.
We cannot allow one lone senator from West Virginia to obstruct the president's agenda, to obstruct the people's agenda.
I hope that we will bring a strong bill to the floor of the Senate as soon as we can and let Mr. Manchin explain to the people of West Virginia why he doesn't have the guts to stand up to powerful special interests.
Man, Harris, so the White House calling it sudden and inexplicable, but maybe they haven't been paying attention. There's this July 28th letter, we'll pop it up on the screen, between Schumer and Manchin, where Manchin very clearly says, you can see at the top of the letter, top line, $1.5 trillion. We always knew his number. And at the bottom of the letter, before the signatures, is Senator Manchin does not guarantee that he will vote for the final reconciliation legislation if it exceeds the conditions outlined in this agreement. So they knew this back in July.
Look, they knew it back in July, and he's been telling them ever since. And he even moved off his number a little bit to 1.75 until the CBO was scoring it and said, no, it still costs 5 times that much almost because you got to add in the years, and you guys did some trickery with the numbers. He is in the middle of the swamp. And this is what swamp creatures do, right? They just ignore the creatures that are telling them, look, this isn't going to work out. And they try to get done through arm twisting and whatnot, politically speaking. And it's not going to work on Joe Manchin. It's not going to work on Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona either, who has voted previously along with Trump ideals 60% of the time down in Arizona. So, look, they're not listening to the members of the party because those aren't the woke folk screaming at the top of their lungs and cussing at the rest of us, like Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. Right? These are the people who actually are doing the job of representing their voters, and apparently they thought they could ignore him. Now, let's give Manchin some credit, though, for also being in the swamp. Because what you do when you don't get your point across is you go out and you talk about it. He was on the radio again today, doing what he said he wouldn't do, negotiating some of those terms to get him back to the table. So we want to be completely transparent about what's going on here. Republicans love the fact that he sounds a little bit more like them right now. But he's not them. And this isn't over yet. So let's see how it shakes out.
It's not over. And the White House, Kennedy, continuing with their deception, telling us that this doesn't add to the deficit. It costs $0. But we have this roll call headline that accurately points out the CBO says otherwise. The CBO, this is the headline. They write, CBO fully extended reconciliation bill would cost $3 trillion. But yet the White House is still telling us it would cost nothing. Joe Manchin, right to point out all the gimmicks involved in this.
And also, you know, those costs won't be realized until after President Biden leaves office. And that's what's so shady about these long-form pieces of legislation is the negative impacts don't come until the person who pushed them is long gone. So they only care about what affects them in their political moment, not what is going to affect generations. And I'm glad that someone is standing up to this big spending, because it is this massive inflationary spending, and in concert with the government printing money, that is exacerbating the inflation that is hurting low-income earners the most. So Joe Manchin knows that. He has people in his state who are hurting, and he understands the short-term harm, but the long-term gain by stopping and ending this irresponsible spending. I'm glad someone's doing it.
Yeah, and recently, Guy Benson, just in the last hour or so, we have a new clip out from Joe Manchin on Metro News. He points the blame at someone very specific. Let's take a listen.
Well, the bottom line is there's basically, and it's staff. It's staff-driven. I understand staff. It's not the president. It's the staff. And they drove some things, and they put some things out that were absolutely inexcusable. They know what it is, and that's it.
The staff, Guy Benson, not the president.
Might be the press secretary that he's referring to. That statement that she put out was blistering, and I would say somewhat shocking, actually. Manchin's decision was not shocking, because you're right, Kaylee, he's been telegraphing it for months. He put it in writing. In a statement signed by Chuck Schumer, we knew what his demands were. Build Back Better did not come close to those demands, so he decided to pull the plug. Here, maybe, we'll see something next year, very pared down, not really close to BBB, more in line with what Manchin said. But his decision here was not shocking. The calculation of the White House, though, mind-blowing. They still need Joe Manchin's vote on literally everything. It's a 50-50 Senate. They're accusing him of being a liar and acting in bad faith. In that same interview, here's one quick, interesting quote that I'll read. He was talking about his place moving forward within the Democratic Party. He said, I would like to hope that he still belongs in the party, but talking about the progressives, if there's no Democrats like me, paraphrasing, then they, meaning the progressives, will have to push me wherever they want me, which is an eyebrow raiser, is it not?
A huge eyebrow raiser. Great find with that, Guy. Also, Tommy, someone who needs to be discussed in all of this, not just the progressives, but the media. Do you remember when the media called essentially John McCain a maverick for stopping President Trump's skinny bill on Obamacare? You pointed this out on Twitter, Guy. And now all of a sudden, Joe Manchin is the one that they're after, they're going to attack. We have this tweet from Mehdi Hassan. We'll pop it up on the screen. She's with MSNBC. What's worse, that that Manchin is killing the Biden legislative agenda and perhaps the future of American democracy, too, or that he wasted most of this year dragging the whole thing out to do it and wasted half of the time that Dems control Congress and the White House. We also have a clip from Carl Bernstein. Let's take a listen.
And this also goes to the question of voting rights, because unless there is something that can be done about the filibuster rule in the Senate, which Manchin again has indicated he will not change, there is not going to be an effective legislative means of doing what needs to be done to guarantee American democracy through the right to vote for all Americans without being suppressed, as we're seeing now.
Tommy.
Yeah, it's these continual intimidation tactics that the far-left progressives are going to use on people like Joe Manchin, but he is the embodiment of democracy. I think the Democrat Party, though, they believe that they answer to the media, and they believe that they answer to Twitter and to social media, but they actually answer to the people. And Kaylee, you and I talk a lot about those forgotten Americans that Trump remembered. Well, those forgotten Americans are also Democrats, and there are a lot of moderate Democrats out there that sit right there with Joe Manchin, that believe in what he's doing, that don't believe in Build Back Better. I mean, when's the last time you saw someone walking around with a Build Back Better hat on? Never. That's the answer to that. People are not in line with this. They might be on social media. They might be when the AOC followers on Instagram Live. But the actual people, those forgotten Americans that are going to vote in 2022 and 2024, they don't want this big socialist spending package. They want to believe in capitalism and freedom, but they also want to have a budget that makes sense, and they want to have people in Congress and in the White House that make sense. So good for him for standing strong. We hope he maintains that. But those forgotten Americans out there that might not have voted for Trump because you wanted a moderate, look what your moderate is doing in the White House. Time to make a better decision in 2022.
No doubt about it. And if you noticed, I confused Joe Manchin and Joe Biden a few times in this segment, because sometimes it's hard to remember who's running Washington these days. Which Joe?